Tashidele, all of you. Welcome back to the teaching on Four Noble Truths with emphasis on the truth of the cessation. To the cessation as to what it is. Today, as most of you know, it is Choekhor Duechen, the day the Buddha Shakyamuni first turned the wheel of Dharma. In fact, 49 days after the Buddha Shakyamuni is achieving enlightenment under the Bodhi tree and not involved in giving any teachings, then the Indra and Brahma, the kings of the celestial the realm of the god and goddesses, and they descended to make a request to the Buddha Shakyamuni, the full awakened one, you become enlightened, and we request you, we beseech that you turn the wheel of Dharma for all the demon sentient beings. And the Buddha said the stanza which said that the path which I've discovered, the truth that I've discovered is so profound, is so peaceful, is devoid of elaborations, is clear light, non-composite. Such a nectar-like dharma, or the truth that I've discovered, is so profound that hardly I find anybody who can fathom the depth of this teaching. Better it is for me to retire into the woods in silence. Brahmana Indra made more prostrations and beseeched the Buddha fervently that Buddha should not remain silent. Please elevate the sufferings, elevate all the beings from the sufferings of samsara. So that was a very fervent request coming from the two kings of the realm of the god and goddesses. And then the Buddha headed towards first. The Buddha thought of, giving the first share of the teaching, nectar of the teaching, to his earlier two teachers, Acharya Alarakalam and Acharya Udreka, to repay their kindness for guiding them into the path. And then knowing that the two teachers already passed away to the next world, so the Buddha Shakyamuni then headed towards Sarnath, and there the five disciples, the first five human disciples, with of course the many non-human disciples there. Then he turned the wheel of Dharma. So for that, first we need to get an overall view of the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. Generally speaking, all the teachings, in fact, it is not like a very systematic way, because in those days, everybody was very simple way of living, and the peasants, and so the Buddha also walking barefooted, and then the people would see this very different, there's a charisma, love radiating from this teacher. Then they simply they walk closer towards him and ask for advice, guidance, and so forth. So this was more like the teachings in the form of advice given. And from that point of view, we see that all the discussion, all the dialogues, all the advice the Buddha gave, they should fall under the teachings of the Buddha, and more precisely under one of the categories of the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. So it is said that there are like 84,000 teachings given, and of course more. But generally speaking, it is said that 84,000 teachings given, and in some records it said 80,000 teachings given. So what is the difference? So this difference is very clearly elucidated by Acharya the Vasubandhu in his text Abhidhamma Kosh. There he made this distinction, that why in some texts you find simply the mention of 80,000 teachings, and whereas in some texts the mention of the 84,000. And this is interesting, the point for all of us to know, was that the Buddha Shakyamuni, after becoming enlightened, and then taking the role as a teacher to guide the beings. Oh, okay, just imagine in those days, so much of problems, individual problems with individual people, problems of the families, communities, and then between the different kingdoms. So there, wherever there's a problem, the Buddha would meet with these problems. He would be there to resolve the conflicts and give advice wherever necessary. This is how it was happening. And then at a certain point, the Buddha's congregation, Buddha's the circle of the devotees started to increase. In other words, the monastic members started to increase in number, and then the disciples, very prominent disciples like Shariputra, Moggallana, and then later on Mahakashyap, the incredibly great teacher Mahakashyap. So they started to see that this is very important for the Buddha to have some attendance. And then Delhi's heat. Okay, I have this. Delhi's temperature is not too bad, but the humidity is quite high. Okay, so then these great the disciples of the Buddha, like Shariputra, Moggallana, and then Mahakashyap, who later became the first heir to the Buddha Shakyamuni, they felt the need for the Buddha to have some attendance. And then they started to have discussions who would be the most the appropriate person. And then through their consensus, they identified the Ananda, the Buddha's the cousin. Then the matter was reported to they then requested Ananda if this is what he would be willing to do, to serve as attendant of the Buddha, the main attendant. Then Ananda, this is very interesting. In fact, if it were you or me, it would be our honor to say yes, of course. What a great honor! But Ananda did not say yes directly. He said that yes, provided he laid a condition, and the condition was that there was the other disciples of the Buddha. They were a little astonished or a little taken aback. So what is this? Another, why he's laying the condition? Why not feeling the honor? And of course, later on, we'll come to realize that this very profound insight of the Ananda, his proper plan, the vision. We'll come to realize that later. Then Ananda said that provided the awakened one, referring to the Buddha, awakened one teaches only in my presence. And then they were, okay, what do you do? This is not that we can decide. This is what the awakened one, the Buddha Shakyamuni, and the awakened one will decide. Then they all went to the awakened one, Buddha Shakyamuni, and then they reported everything. This is what we felt. We made the request to Ananda, the Venerable Ananda, and the Venerable Ananda laid this condition. So we can't do anything. So what advice would the fully awakened one would have for us? And the fully awakened one advises they finally to say yes. Okay, henceforth I'll give teachings only in the presence of Ananda. So Ananda accepted, Venerable Ananda accepted to be the Buddha's chief attendant. So from this, what we get the two scenarios of the Buddha's biography. Buddha's biography since the time of enlightenment at the age of 35, age of 35 through to age 80, 81. And the beginning from Ananda's, Venerable Ananda's involvement as the attendant of the Buddha till the end of the Buddha's, till the end. So there are two the scenario. All the teachings the Buddha gave since enlightenment, way before Venerable Ananda accepted to be the attendant of the Buddha, these teachings are said to be constituted of 84,000 teachings, whereas 80,000 is counted. The teachings are counted as 80,000 teachings of the Buddha, counted as 80,000, beginning from Venerable Ananda's acceptance to be the attendant of the Buddha Shakyamuni. So this is the distinction that we need to know. Okay, so all these teachings of the Buddha can be grouped into three families or three classes, referred to as the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. So today, which corresponds to Choekhor Duechen, or the great day, the great day of the turning wheel of Dharma, that corresponds to the first turning wheel of Dharma. Of course, the first turning wheel of Dharma, most of us we know that the place was Sarnath, Varanasi, where this turning of the wheel of Dharma happened. And in terms of subject matter, it was the Four Noble Truths. So that is, if we come to understand the three turnings wheel of Dharma, subject matters of the three turnings wheel of Dharma, we see that they are not just like a random subject chosen. So these are all connected, extremely connected, profoundly connected, and to the extent that one individual person can see the panorama of the whole Dharma, panorama of the whole path within the framework of these three turnings wheel of Dharma. The first one lays the ground, overall ground, the blueprint, the big blueprint of how we are trapped in samsara and how we can exit on the basis of the Four Noble Truths. Once that blueprint was created, then second turning wheel of Dharma, which the Buddha turned in Rajgir, with an emphasis on the emptiness of intrinsic reality. According to Prasangika philosophy, emptiness of intrinsic reality, where the Buddha taught that everything is like a dream. There's nothing objectively there as to be identified as this or that. It's all like what is coming from our mind. A second turning wheel of Dharma, this gives us an extremely profound understanding of the Four Noble Truths. The third one, the truth of the cessation. The second turning wheel of Dharma gives such brilliant exposition, brilliant exposure to the third, the Noble Truth, the truth of cessation. So this is what we're going to emphasize on today for this. And then during the third turning wheel of Dharma, which the Buddha, the turning wheel of Dharma happened in Vaishali. Subject matter was primarily the distinguishing the characteristics, and alongside the Buddha touched various topics like the Buddha nature, very interesting topic, very important topic. The Buddha nature was also touched there in that teaching, third turning wheel of Dharma. In fact, for information, third turning wheel of Dharma, it so happened that in Vaishali, there were all these great bodhisattvas, like Bodhisattva Maitreya, Bodhisattva Manjushri, Bodhisattva the Aravalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Pramad Samudgatha, Bodhisattva Vajrapani, and so forth. All these great bodhisattvas, we refer to them as the bodhisattvas on the 10th bhumi, who are on the verge to become enlightened, full enlightened. They were there, and then the Buddha Shakyamuni presiding over the congregation, and the 10 bodhisattvas, they asked 10 different questions. Not just a bodhisattva on the first level, like the path, but bodhisattvas on the 10 bhumi. Gate, Paragate, Parasangade. Parasangade, further divided to 10, refer to 10 grounds on the 10 bhumis. Sachu, 10 bhumis, 10 grounds. So the 10th one. So these bodhisattvas, they asked 10 different questions. And the Buddha responded, and these 10 different questions, they are different, literally different questions. Topics are different, they are not related. They're all different. And the one question was raised on the Buddha nature, about the Tathagata Garba, the true nature of the purity, the true treasure of the purity that exists within each one of us, which gives us hope that if we put effort, if anybody puts effort, we all have the same potential to achieve the maximum the fearlessness and the infinite happiness. So this is amazing. This is something so precious that today we talk about the equality, gender equality, the equality, and so forth. So all these, the concept of equality, we can see that they are so well grounded if we understand this concept of the Buddha nature, which the Buddha explains so in great detail as a response to one of the questions asked by the great bodhisattvas. Then what is directly related to the first turning wheel of Dharma and second turning wheel of Dharma corresponds to the response Buddha gave to the question asked by the Bodhisattva Pramat Samudgata. Bodhisattva Thundamyandapa. Chanju Saba Thundamyandapa. So Pramat Samudgata. This question, the question which Pramat Samudgata, this is very interesting. There's some of you from those who are doing the Nalanda Master's course and Nalanda Diploma course, you're already aware of these things, and if the need be for you to refresh them once more, that is a great opportunity. For others, this is very interesting, very important point for us to keep note of. The point is that the point is that the first turning wheel of Dharma, which we are going to explain in more detail today, the first turning wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. The main theme, the teaching was subject matter, was the Four Noble Truths. And teaching on Four Noble Truths, how the manner in which the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths was on the ground that the Four Noble Truths exist truly, exist independently and truly. So this was because this was like the basic blueprint. Then second turning wheel of Dharma, Buddha taught in great detail what this the ultimate reality is, where nothing exists truly. And on this basis, then the truth of the cessation is very much fleshed out in great detail. Then, in the first teaching, first turning wheel of Dharma, the Buddha taught that Four Noble Truths exist truly. And second turning wheel of Dharma, the Buddha taught nothing exists truly. Then, of course, there is the third class meaning the third category of people who are a little confused. And then Bodhisattva, the Pramata Samudgata, he himself was highly realized, and he did not really require this explanation, clarification there. But then on behalf of the third category of the people who were confused, lost in the two the teachings, two turnings wheel of Dharma, then the Bodhisattva Pramata Samudgata, on behalf of them, he stood up and asked this question. So, first turning wheel of Dharma, the fully awakened one taught that Four Noble Truths exist truly, and second turning wheel of Dharma in Rajgir, the fully awakened one taught that nothing exists truly. On the surface, on the provisionally, or on the surface, or the face value. So, given that the fully awakened one has no contradiction inside, so what must be the reason for the fully awakened one to teach the Bhagavan, or the fully awakened one to teach in the first wheel of Dharma that the Four Noble Truths exist truly? So this was the question raised, and the Buddha came up with the explanation, clarification. That clarification or the interpretation of his own teaching, the teaching from the first turning wheel of Dharma and second turning wheel of Dharma, that came to be known as the third turning wheel of Dharma in relation to the first and the second turning wheel of Dharma. So whereas that forms one part of the response out of the 10 responses, out of the responses given to the 10 questions. And the remaining 9 questions, they're of course on different topics. So this is the basic framework that we're going to study today. So with this in mind, the first 10 noble of Dharma, subject matter wise, the Four Noble Truths, which is like the basic, the benchmark or the framework of the Buddhist teachings. And let us all keep in mind that today on this earth, we see that there are 3 different traditions: Theravada tradition, and the Chinese Buddhist tradition, and the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. There are 3. And of course, let's say that, for example, I went to Vietnam and the Vietnamese. I came to learn from them that while some part of Buddhism came through China, but some teachings, some part of the Buddhism came directly from India also. So all these discussions are there. Those directly from India are there, and those through China are there. So in all, we can say that one, broadly speaking, Theravada tradition Buddhism, and the Chinese Buddhist tradition, and the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. 3 traditions. And so there, the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, this becomes like the basic framework of all the traditions. And from this, we'll see that we are all brothers and sisters. It's not that, okay, one is the Theravada and you are the Chinese Buddhism, you are Tibetan Buddhism, you are not all these complications, unnecessary complications. It's like the litigation cases in the family. So it's totally unnecessary. So whereas a sensible person can see that all these 3 traditions, they are like, once you know what the Four Noble Truths are, on that basis, one is able to relate this to one's own life. Then we see that all these 3 traditions, the framework, the basic ground of all these 3 teachings, of all these 3 traditions, is the Four Noble Truths. So from this, we see that we are all brothers and sisters. So this is only the basis for the harmony, not for conflicts. This is very important for us to realize. Now the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, this is very important for us. One, we have to know it. You have to know it before, say, correlating or before practicing the Four Noble Truths. First, we have to know it intellectually. Once you know this, then it's very important to see how this correlates with your being, with your emotional world, with your psychological being. That's so important to relate this to the real life. And then on that basis, given that particularly that what we are doing here, we are the tradition of the Bodhisattvayana or the Mahayana. So there, from that point of view, it's not just seeking to get out of samsara, but also to expand your love and affection. This is so precious. This is so precious because oftentimes this can be the danger. We seek attack to say that I'm from the Mahayana tradition, I'm from Theravada tradition, I'm from the Chinese tradition, I'm from the Tibetan tradition. We just seek the attack. We just want a sense of belonging. Okay, I'm following the Tibetan Buddhism. I'm within Tibetan Buddhism, or I'm following Sakya tradition. I'm following Nyingma tradition. Oh, the others, it's just pure intellectual discussions. There's no practice. And the Sakya and Gelug would say that they don't really know what is Dharma. Yeah, they so loudly talk about the practice, but they don't know what Dharma is. They have no intellectual understanding. Buddha's teaching is so profound, it requires deeper intellectual understanding. They don't know. So there's just unnecessary conflicts. This is anybody who is involved in this kind of discussion, saying that, the other was not there's a sense of air of superiority of the tradition that you're following, which means that the person does not know the basic framework of Four Noble Truths. Although the person might be so eloquent in talking about it, but experientially something's lacking. So this is so finally the proof that one is following the Buddhist teaching is that the person, they say the recognition of the other person from whatever religion, from whatever background, whatever say the gender, they should basic recognition that this person does not want suffering, this person wants happiness. And then I'm no superior to this with respect to this aspiration. I'm just as same as a person. Others also same as me. So with this basic recognition, there's love and affection flows. That must be the basic framework of the Buddha's teaching. If this is what is happening by following the Buddha's teachings, let's say this air of the superiority of my religion, my tradition, my sect, if this is building up, it's very unfortunate. Whereas by following this, and then you see other traditions, like Theravada tradition, and Theravada practitioners seeing the minor practitioner, seeing the Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, and Tibetan Buddhism seeing a Chinese Buddhist or Theravada Buddhist, or even the Muslims, Hindus, Christians, Jains, the Jews, Baha'is, or the Zoroastrianism, the Parsis, any follower, the Sikhism. Oh, there's a basic recognition coming. It's amazing, so good that they are all following the practice. They're all following the tradition which admires love and affection. This must come. If that is coming, then you prove to be a real follower of the Buddhist teaching. So therefore, this is very important. I'm saying this to you. Meanwhile, I should also not forget it, that I should also do the same thing. So this should be if this is happening, wonderful. The Buddha would be so happy. Okay. So, in other words, what I'm saying is the Four Noble Truths, it becomes like the basic framework which all the three traditions of Buddhism will see that we are all brothers and sisters. This is a commonality among all the three traditions. So, the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths. For this, okay, given that most of the viewers, I know that you are either from the another master's course or another diploma course, or be exposed to some other, say the study programs on Buddhism. So I like to be, and particularly today is a very auspicious day. So therefore, let me try to share with you some thoughts which we can say for you and for me to directly relate to our being. The intellectual is like the mirror, and then say to see what is inside me, how my mind is working. So for that, we need to have the basic understanding that I have a problem. This recognition should be there. I have a problem. Meaning, in terms of physical problems, in terms of mental problems, agitations, sadness, fears, and so forth. This is something we have to we have to know. This is very important. In fact, this is very interesting. For example, like say one of my root teachers, Venerable Geshe, who was the founding director of Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, and also the extremely dear teacher, Venerable Genamrimpa Rinpoche, who was the hermit for like 30-40 years as hermit, and there from some of the advice that they gave to me when I was a young boy, very naive young boy. Today, seeing the world, meeting with all different people from all different walks of life, from the different world, from different countries, and different backgrounds, and then what is traditional, what is modern. When I see all these things, then I really get fascinated, really thrilled, really fascinated. Wow, that's amazing. They thinking. They are so amazingly modern. Amazingly modern. So Venerable, for example, I said, this was totally what I was not really expecting. when my teacher, Venerable Gelamrim Rinpoche, I was in class, I think age 17. I was in class 11 before I joined the monastery. Class 11, with the, say, where my fondness to physics and mathematics was just at its height, and the gaining so much confidence in physics and mathematics, to see that as well, like the physics and mathematics really represent the ultimate reality. This was what this young boy was feeling. And then at the same time, being brought up in the Buddhist culture since childhood, in a Buddhist family and in the Buddhist school. And then the same, around that age, physics was more precisely introduced. And then the little bit of clash of thoughts coming in this young boy's mind. One, the traditional concept of the Buddhist concepts, and the other, the physics, which taught me to ask questions: how, why, and what, where, when, and so forth. So then I started to ask questions to the traditional thinking. And there, luckily, I was very fortunate that the Tibetan teacher, the religious instructor, Venerable Geshe, I'm so lucky that he happened to be our teacher. He was being exposed to philosophy, psychology, logic. So all my questions, he so satisfactorily gave answers to the satisfaction of this young boy. Very fortunate. So meanwhile, the Venerable Gelamrim Rinpoche, he was in his hermitage. And then one day, there's so many thoughts going in this young boy's mind. Whether or not Buddhism, it really reflects the reality and so forth, with a little bit of air of being a fond of physics and mathematics. Then I happened to seek appointment. That time, the Venerable Gelamrim Rinpoche, say, our seniors, those who were in class 12, they used to go to him. Okay, I was in class 10. They used to go to him, and I really, then coming to know about our seniors going there, I sent a message to one of the seniors if I can have the audience or meeting, the appointment with him. And then this senior must have introduced me to Venerable Gelamrim Rinpoche, saying that there was a young boy who is good in studies, in science and so forth. And then he has some questions. So appointment was granted. And when I was there, I could feel through his body language, the body language of Venerable Gelamrim Rinpoche, that he was a little cautious, a little uneasy. Oh God, this boy, I came to hear from his seniors that he is, if they say, good in studies, and then he has questions about Buddhism. So maybe a little sarcastic about Buddhism, a little bit against Buddhism, maybe have some arguments. So he was often naturally, if somebody comes to argue, naturally the person will not be feeling comfortable. So I could feel that he is little, not too easy. He doesn't really feel so easy, at ease. No, my intent was not to argue at all. So basically, yes, I was so fond of physics, mathematics, and then meanwhile, I have questions about Buddhism, serious questions about the basic structure of the Buddhist thoughts. I do have questions, but not for debate purpose. So I went there, and then the Gelamrim Rinpoche, he says something that even today, it hits my mind so well that, wow, that's amazing. I was not really expecting such answer coming from him. What he said was that you don't have to practice Buddhism if you don't have suffering. Wow, that's amazing. That's interesting. It's not that there's a dogma there. You have to do it. Whether you like it or not, whether you're happy, not happy, you should be grateful of the Buddha. You should be grateful of the Buddha's teachings. This is, you have to follow. If you don't follow this, you'll go to hell. No. He said, if you have no suffering, don't do Buddhism. No need to do Buddhism. Wow, that's amazing. This was not what I was expecting. Amazing. Wow. Even today, really, I felt like hypnotized by this, mesmerized by this, the response coming from such a teacher who did not have any exposure to the modern studies. Amazing modern thinking. This is amazing. And this is the beauty and the strength of the Buddhist teachings, indeed. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. So the point is that if you don't have suffering, don't go for Buddhism. Don't go for Buddhism. No need to study Buddhism if you don't have suffering. This point. So because if you do have suffering, then reflect on the suffering well. So be more matured. This is the point. Be more matured. What does it mean by matured? Say, those people, when they get the salary today, they're so happy, excited, they spend it. And the next day, the money finishes, they just droop. They feel so inferior, lost, so they're lost and helpless, hopeless. Again, in the end of the month, again you get a little bit of salary, again excited, just spend lavishly, not at all able to see the future. So these are like referred to as the childish. And those who can see further away in the future, they are known as the matured ones. So in the Buddha's teachings, this amazing way of classifying the beings. Buddha's teachings, oftentimes, samsaric beings are referred to as the childish because they don't want the suffering. If they don't want the suffering, if you're wise, just exit from suffering. But we don't do that. We don't do that. The suffering, and then we get a little bit of happiness. We're intoxicated by this. We forgot the past suffering. Again, we end up in suffering. Again, we feel we feel totally being broken. Again, the next time you get a little bit of happiness, again you forgot it. This is what is known as the short-term or the short-sighted person and the childish. So we should be more matured. Matured meaning that what kind of sufferings that we are going through, we should know that well. Okay, and those who can see the prospective sufferings in advance, this is a very matured person. So this is, for this reason, the Buddha said, this is the truth of suffering. For us to identify the truth of this is so important. Only if you do that, if you go back in time, just scan your life and go back in time when they're 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Okay, in my case, let's say that, like the last about like 10 years, I lost many of, my, the friends, colleagues, and some seniors also, many passed away. And then they say 2015, I lost my father. And then before that, I think 1997. I think 1997, I think, I lost one of the dearest teachers, Venerable the Geshe Los Angeles Rinpoche. And then, then 2003, I lost my teacher, Venerable Geshe Lamen Rinpoche. And then meanwhile, many of my friends, they disappeared from this world. So they just go back in time. And then say, when I was just 5 years old, I lost my mother. And that I could still so well remember the whole in the form of a snapshot. I don't remember it like a whole movie, but like a snapshot. I remember that I was the three children, me, my sister, my brother, three of us. We were all crying, hugging the father, and the father was also so demoralized, broken, and crying over the loss of our mother. And I was just 5 years old. So that snapshot I still have so vividly in my mind, and so painful, extremely painful. And likewise, each one of us, we have our own experiences of the pains of life. And it's very important for us. Let us not be, say, the coward. Let us not be, let us not feel that, okay, this is very painful. Let us not try to avoid these things. Try to bring them. And finally, if you know that this is really something painful, then we'll learn how to come out of that. That's very important. So therefore, the point is that these reflections, relating that to our own life, which the Buddha identified as the truth of suffering. This is so important. Okay, so now to be more direct, okay, so the Four Noble Truths can be explained from various angles, and today I'd like to explain it on the basis of what is referred to as the 12 recitations. 12 recitations pertaining to the Four Noble Truths. This is exactly how the Buddha taught the first turning wheel of Dharma. And these 12 recitations, referred to as the 12 recitations pertaining to the Four Noble Truths, this can be broken down, grouped into three sets of four. The first set pertaining to identifying the Four Noble Truths. The second set pertaining to the practice associated with the Four Noble Truths. And the third pertaining to the results of the practice associated with Four Noble Truths. These are the three sets of the four recitations pertaining to the Four Noble Truths. And okay, so the first set pertaining to the identifying the Four Noble Truths is when the Buddha said, this is the truth of suffering, this is the truth of cause of suffering, and this is the truth of the cessation of suffering, and this is the truth of the path leading to the cessation. In fact, the Buddha simply identified what the Four Noble Truths are. Say, the first two form the cause-effect relationship. The first one, truth of suffering, is the result, and the second one, truth of the cause of suffering, is the cause. So these two form the where we are bound by the cause of suffering, the truth of suffering is unavoidable. This is what the Buddha said. If you don't want this, go for the second set of cause and effect, where you're bound by the path leading to cessation. You'll be liberated. You will experience the freedom from the suffering, referred to as the cessation of suffering, where the suffering ceases, where the suffering ceases, and the cessation is achieved. So this is the basic identification of Four Noble Truths, and I don't want to go into detail as of now, because the emphasis that I like to place on is on the truth of the cessation. So the truth of suffering. When the Buddha said this is the truth of suffering, the Buddha was helping us to identify the three kinds of suffering: the suffering of suffering change, and a pervasive condition of suffering. Okay, the first, the suffering is very easy. All the sufferings which we all easily identify as suffering, these are referred to as suffering. Then the second one, I don't want to go into detail. I simply want to explain, identify what that is. All contaminated happiness, all defiled happiness somehow influenced by the afflictions, they are known as the suffering change. And how they are suffering change, how they are suffering in the first place, and how they are referred to as suffering change. Why change? These we have to study separately. If you're interested, we have a more detailed explanation of the Four Noble Truths. Recordings are all available there, and and also there are very standard books like say the Lama Tsongkhapa's book, the three volumes of the Great Exposition, the Great Treatise on the Stages of Power Enlightenment, Lamrim, 3 volumes, and then Zabadu Rinpoche's the book, or the Words of My Perfect Teacher, and then the Tabul Haji's book, which is extremely important, the Ornamental Liberation. All these books are available there, and then many books by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, they're also available there, so you can refer to these books for the detailed understanding as to why all the contaminated happiness, all the happiness which we consider happiness, in actuality they are suffering. How? Right? It doesn't mean that we have to get rid of our happiness. This is not the point. But say we can enjoy the happiness, meanwhile identifying that, okay, ultimately this is not. Ultimately this will only let the miseries perpetuate. This recognition should be there. So this is the meaning of maturity. Small children, they will be very happy, even if there's a danger, even if there's a danger that the robbers are coming. But the small children would be more happy instead of running to get a chocolate and eat it. That is, that is what the small children would prefer to do. But the elders will not do. The elders will throw the chocolate and run for life because they are more matured. So likewise, so the real mature people will do things which will actually get rid of all the miseries and bring the miseries to an end altogether. So this is the mature people. But for the not fully mature people like us, for us, whatever happiness that we have, for example, like this, the juice, okay, you enjoy it. Meanwhile, keep in mind that finally it has the element of the poison there. It is not this juice that is the poisonous, but finally my thinking, there's element of a poison there. So likewise, any happiness which we identify as happiness, the comparing these with the transcendence, what we speak about, the cessation of suffering, comparing the happiness that we get in the mundane world, comparing these with the, what we talk about, the cessation of suffering, which is the absolute peace, which the Buddha taught as the transcendence of sorrow is peace. When you compare to these two, there's no comparison at all. So this is, we even do not get a glimpse of what that is like. Transcendence of sorrow is absolute peace. Had it been the case that we get this glimpse of what it is like, then what we call as the mundane happiness is we will really see them as poison, as miseries. Okay. Then number 3 is the pervasive conditioned suffering. This is the worst of the suffering, the subtlest of the suffering. And the second one we can identify as something, whether happiness or suffering. The second one, suffering change. But the third one, we even don't identify them. We even don't really see that. For example, air, we don't see that. Okay, this flower, yes, I can see it. It's very solid. This water, okay, it's transparent, but at least I can see that. But the air, I don't see that at all. There are three levels. Likewise, pervasive conditioned suffering, we don't even see that in the first place. So, until we see them, we see the pervasive conditioned suffering and see how that is a mastermind to all the previous suffering. There's no way by which we can apply the remedy. Thus, there's no way by which we can exit from the suffering altogether. We have to continue to cry. We have to continue to live in the fear and cry with tears, endless tears. And the Buddha, they explained it so well, saying that the tears that we shed in samsara, if we are to really contain them in a container, even the three worlds, samsaric worlds, they are too small a container to contain these tears that we shed out of the suffering that we went through since time immemorial till now. This is reality. So, for that matter, we have to identify the pervasive conditioned suffering. Of course, it is not that easy, but we have to struggle it. If you and I really want to get rid of samsara altogether, get rid of all these tears, now enough is enough. Let us stop the tears. I must not shed tears anymore. I must not surrender to the fears of life anymore. If this is what we want to do, then the first step that we do to take is to identify the truth of the pervasive conditioned suffering. The third truth, which the Buddha identified, which the Buddha said as, this is the truth of the suffering. Okay, then number 2, this is the truth of the cause of suffering. So there, of course, again, okay, this is important. This is important. The truth of cause of suffering. Cause of suffering, which it would be good if we can memorize the stanza. which the Nagarjuna taught in chapter 18 of Mula Madhyamika Karika, where in Tibetan, Leda Nyumo, Sebetar, Leda Nyumo Namdole, Teda Tule Tubani Tombani Kabakir. In English, the ceasing of karmas and afflictions is nirvana. Karmas and afflictions arise from conceptual flaws, and which in turn arise from elaboration of self-grasping ignorance. And this elaboration ceases through the wisdom of emptiness. So this, if you can remember, then we can understand the 5 points there. Ceasing of karmas and afflictions is nirvana. Obviously, nirvana is samsara. That is the miseries that we go through. And the cause of the miseries, the remaining 4, contaminant karmas, afflictions, inappropriate attention, and the ignorance. Okay, so I'm not going to go into detail. Again, all these details you'll find from the earlier teachings. The recordings available in Tibet House. You can get them from our Tibet House office. You can just write to us. So the point is that, in short, the first 3, the elaboration of self-grasping ignorance, inappropriate attention, and afflictions. These 3, we can put them together in the category of affliction. And then contaminant karmas. In other words, if somebody were to ask you, what is the cause of the suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, you can simply say contaminated karmas and afflictions. Okay, so now the point is that then the Buddha taught that this is the truth of the cessation of suffering. If you stop these causes, contaminant karmas and afflictions, then naturally your suffering stops. All the 3 kinds of suffering stops. And then at that point, one experiences what is known as the transcendence of sorrow, which is absolute peace. You will experience absolute peace. All your tears, all our tears, we can stop shedding tears altogether. Okay. And how to achieve that state where you experience the ultimate freedom from all miseries, ultimate freedom from all fears of life, and we stop shedding tears, is by following the path. What path? So that path, to put it very simply, is the path of the wisdom of emptiness. And while all the teachings of Buddhas, they provide us with the paths, but the paths can be classified into 2. One category known as the ripening paths, and the other known as the liberating path. So of all the 84,000 of teachings the Buddha gave, they are all to give us provide us with the paths, show us the paths. And the paths, one part is the the ripening paths. All the other teachings, except for the teaching of wisdom of emptiness, all other teachings, they are the paths referred to as the ripening paths. And whereas the wisdom of emptiness alone is the liberating path, which what actually liberates us is the wisdom of emptiness. And all others are to ripen, help us to ripen this wisdom of emptiness. So this is one thing. And then in a broad sense, this wisdom of emptiness can be spoken of in relation to the Gade, Parasamgade, Bodhisoha. The 5 parts are there. Okay, this one thing. Now the next one, this first, the set of the 4 recitations pertaining to the identification of the 4 Noble Truths. Done. The second one is the set of the 4 Noble Truths, the set of the 4 recitations pertaining to the practice related to the 4 Noble Truths. What are the practices? So there the Buddha taught the truth of suffering is to be identified. The truth of the cause of suffering is to be abandoned. Truth of the cessation of suffering is to be actualized. And the truth of the path leading to the cessation is to be meditated upon. Okay, so we see that there are the four different practices associated with each of the Four Noble Truths. So first one, with suffering, you identify them. That's your job. With the cause of suffering, you have to abandon them. You have to eradicate them. That is our job. The actualization, the truth of the cessation of suffering, the peace, that is to actualize. That we have to attain it. And finally, how to attain it? The truth of the path leading to cessation. That is to be meditated meditated upon. Okay, these are the practices that we should be doing associated with the Four Noble Truths. Then the last one is the recitations, the four recitations pertain to the set of the four recitations pertain to the results associated with the practice of the Four Noble Truths. So what are the results? So to identify the results, the Buddha taught the last four recitations, where the Buddha said, although the truth of suffering is to be identified, there is nothing to be identified. Although the truth of the cause of suffering is to be abandoned, there is nothing to be abandoned. Although the truth of cessation of suffering is to be actualized, there is nothing to be actualized. And finally, although the path leading to cessation is to be meditated upon, there's nothing to be meditated upon. Okay, this is a very important part. Okay, now they say what is meant by, if I relate this with the first one, although the truth of suffering is to be identified, there is nothing to be identified. If I relate this to this, then we will all know how to relate this to the following three truths as well. The first, although the truth of suffering is to be identified, but there is nothing to be identified. This has to be understood on two levels. One on the conventional level and the other on the ultimate level. On the conventional level, say, those who already reach the Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Swaha. Those who reach the Bodhi Swaha level, they already reached the ultimate, they already reached the final result. When you reach the final result of the paths, the paths that you have practiced, when you reach the final result, then your job is done. Your job is done. You don't really have to say the suffering is to identify it when you are on the path, when you are trying, when you're trying to remove your miseries. So there, in the process of you trying, so there you have to identify the suffering. But once you achieve the result of having eradicated all the suffering, then your job is done. You don't have to identify the suffering anymore, because there's nothing left there. There's nothing left there as suffering to be identified. For you, you have already identified all the sufferings because you have abandoned all the sufferings. So, although the suffering is to be identified when you are in the process of the practice of the path, once you reach the result, there's nothing to be identified as suffering. This is how you relate this to that. This is the one interpretation. The second interpretation pertaining to the ultimate reality. Although the truth of suffering is to be identified, but there is nothing to be identified. So the first part, although truth of suffering is to be identified, means on the conventional level, suffering is something that we can identify. But on the ultimate level, there's nothing to be identified, because ultimately nothing exists. Likewise, ultimately, there's no cause of suffering to be abandoned. Ultimately, there's no cessation to be actualized. Ultimately, there's no path to be meditated upon. So for that, we have to study what does it mean by ultimately. Okay. Now, I'd like to go into little more detail of the cessation. What is nirvana? What is Buddhahood? Okay. So this is pertaining to the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the cause of suffering. Finally, how we started the journey was, okay, let's say that at the time of Buddha, okay, let me read. There are several anecdotes. I'd like to share one with you. That there was a young couple, very young couple, maybe in the late teenagers, very young couple, and both of them somehow they mentally they were somehow had a very strong predisposition in the dharma. Dharma meaning predisposition to escape from samsara, both of them. Somehow because of the force, because of the pressure from the family, they had to marry. So they started to lead a life as a couple. And then finally what happened was that their parents passed away. When the parents passed away, then both of them decided, okay, now the both of us, we are interested in dharma. We are not interested in just the mundane, the marriage life. So we will go on a path to seek the path. And both of them agreed. And both of them agreed to go on their own. Then after a while, after maybe like 2 years to 3 years, two of them met once more. And then the two of them started to share the experience. And the girl, the girl had a very nightmarish stories to share. A very unfortunate incident that happened in her group. In her, the group which meant to be spiritual. And then the the husband seemed to be very happy with his spiritual life. And that the husband felt so, they say, sorry to the wife or to the girl. And the husband offered to take her to his teacher. And the girl said, no, I'm fed up with any spirituality. I'm fed up with any spirituality. I don't believe in any of these. This is what the girl said. And the husband said, no, it doesn't matter. You don't have to follow my teacher. You don't have to follow my teacher. Just come and meet him and then you leave. And who was his teacher? Buddha Shakyamuni. And the girl, unfortunately, she met with the tradition. Tradition, what today is like the Charvaka tradition. Tradition which, not really Charvaka, a tradition which believes in like a hedonism. A hedonistic tradition, where people believe in relishing and so forth. And the girl said, no, I'll not come to see your teacher. And the boy said, it doesn't matter. Just come once. Come once. I will not ask you the second time at all in my life. You decide. Then the girl finally said yes. And the boy took the girl to the Buddha. And the girl, seeing the Buddha, she was just all her agonies and the pains melted and dissolved. She surrendered. And then she requested the Buddha. Okay, so the point is that finally, what brought us to Dharma? Let us not forget this. To speak about cessation, first we need to be very sure what brought us to Dharma. If we are not too clear about this, what brought us to Dharma, what's the reality of samsara and so forth, then the true cessation accordingly. If what brought us to Dharma, the clarity is like 10%, then the concept, at the most, the concept of cessation that you get is going to be 10%. Whereas what brought to us into Dharma, or what the real, the matured, the spiritual people see the world as the painful. If you see it like 80%, then your understanding of cessation through learning will be like 80%. So that's very important for us to have a very clear picture of what brought us to Dharma and what is the reality of samsara overall. So knowing this, then we see that finally, believe it or not, whether you are Buddhist or not, it doesn't matter. Whether you're boy or not, it doesn't matter. Whether boy or girl, it doesn't matter. Whether you're young or old, it doesn't matter. We all, say for example, if you ask, what do you think is the purpose of life? Some people say money. Some people say power. Some people say a good family. Some people say adventure. Some people say shopping. Some people say the ample of drugs or ample of alcohol. So this is and some people say adventure and the art, aesthetics, music, and some people say research, and so forth. Or some people say peace. Okay, so then if you ask the second question, why do you want money? Why do you want power? Why do you want aesthetics? Why do you want music? Why do you want a good family? Why do you want adventure? If you ask these questions, then they will all boil down to the same point. They say that with the money, then I can have, say, everything I like. Say, why do you like the other things? That makes me happy. Why do you want a good family? Good family is what I like to have. I feel happy. And then say the artists, yeah, the arts, aesthetics, that is the wonder. This is the music of life. I feel happy. Everybody seeks happiness. This is the reality. Now, some people may not be happy to use the word happy. They would be more happy to use the word, say, the fulfillment. That's also fine. It doesn't matter. It's just the matter of the words. But finally, we are seeking something. Happiness, fulfillment, ease. If you want to use the word ease, ease. If you don't get it, then the fear arises. If you don't get these, we feel the fear. Nobody wants fear. Nobody wants fear. In summary, what we can say is everyone, whether you're a believer or non-believer, whether Buddhists, Christians, Jains, Hindus, Muslims, the Sikhs, Jews, whatever, Baha'i, or the Parsis, whatever you're following, everybody, in short, everybody is seeking happiness or fulfillment, and everybody is seeking to get rid of fears of life. This is this is reality of everyone. If you identify that so well, then the next question is how to terminate this fear, this question. And to terminate this fear, there are various levels. There are various levels of terminating the fear. Okay, on a very gross level, terminate the fear, I'll say the terminate the fear by removing the external factors. This is a very gross way. For example, say Delhi, in the month of, let's say in the month of the June, May, end of May and beginning of June, temperature shoots up to like 46, sometimes 47, once in a while 47, otherwise 46. And okay, that's fine. The verse says that temperature plus the humidity. That temperature and the humidity combined together. Sometimes you go into one particular room without the AC or without the AC, you go into it, suddenly you open the door, you can feel like the heat wave of the oven. You can feel that. Very scary. One time I entered into one of the small rooms in my apartment. I could feel this heat wave. Suddenly the fear, it reminds me of what hell realm is like. Hot hell realm is just a very, very, very insignificant example of a hell realm. Very scary. Okay, so what I'm saying is that I tell people that if you're in Delhi, particularly around that time, so when the temperature is below 40, it's fine. You can be under a fan. You can use some. If you're under AC, best. If not, under fan or cooler fan is also fine. But when it crosses 40, I tell people, if the young people, particularly the young ones, don't torture yourself. It can really damage your body. Make sure that we are under a proper cooling system when it crosses 40 degrees centigrade, not Fahrenheit. Okay, this is what I'm saying is that, so then we have to run away from this the acute heat. And then when temperature drops below like the 5 degrees centigrade and then below zero, again, it is not a wise idea to bear that. Try to take shelter in the heating system. This is very important. In other words, what I'm saying is that the fears that we have, The one way of evading the fear, the grossest way is by creating the conducive external factors. That is one way of the cessation of suffering. Very gross level of cessation of suffering. Cessation of suffering of excessive heat. Cessation of suffering of excessive cold. Cessation of suffering of excessive hunger, thirst, and so forth. And cessation of suffering of the abuse. So these, we can stay away from the external factors, and you get something. This is, we can say in a very gross level, we can say this is a form of cessation. But this is a very gross one. The real cessation should be related to the mind. This is important. Okay, so now let's say the sound of a clap, which most of you are aware of. Sound of a clap. This sound of a clap is the metaphor of the suffering that we go through, the fear that we go through. When I say fear, once I was giving a talk in Delhi University, and then I talked about getting rid of fear, giving the people there, people are mostly from masters and PhD and so forth. I just took for granted that they would understand what fear is. But then the one boy in the end, one boy asked a question saying that, Geshe, you have been always talking about the fear. I don't have any fear. That's what he said. Okay, fear, it has so many levels. So when the fear crosses 50%, then ordinary people describe that as fear, or the fear of losing the job. Then what? Fear of meeting with the wild animal, like a tiger, the fear of earthquake, and the fear of losing one's near and dear ones. Okay, fear of not getting a good lunch. No, that's not a fear. If you get a good lunch, good. If you don't get something just to remove my hunger, that's good enough. It's not fear. Yes, this is what is meant by ordinary people's understanding of fear. Where the fear is 50%, more than 50%, people identify them as fear. Less than 50%, 50% less, they will not identify them as fear. They will simply say, there's a little bit of problem, but this is fine, I can bear it. But this form of fear, because fear, there are various degrees. To put it very simply, I put it in the form of a fear. The fear of 5%, 10%, 20%, and so forth. And they say the mastermind, the fear of the mastermind creating the problems. Say, usually the masterminds, when you meet with those people directly, their facade is very different. They're so kind, gentle, the facade is so kind, gentle. You will not get the impression that this person will ever torture me. But that person is the mastermind of the one who's torturing you. That person is acting through the force of that mastermind. So the point is that when you meet the mastermind, you will not get the feeling of the fear. When you meet the person who's below them, the subordinate of that person, then you feel the fear. That is the very low level understanding of fear. Whereas someone who's very insightful, someone who's very smart, when you see the mastermind, will see that this is the real cause of the problem. So although having the facade of gentleness and the tenderness and softness in the speech, but this is the mastermind. So the real fear is with this person. When this person is gone, others is fine. You just give you just make them friend, give them what they want, they'll become your friend. But this person, mastermind, will not become your friend. Okay, so that is about the maturity. Now the point is that the sound of clap. So one is coming from the sound of clap is the miseries that we're going through. So this misery is coming, this sound of clap is coming from the two hands. External, internal. Two factors come together, then the miseries arise. So external factors, to get into the external factors to the best you can, and then the fear is removed temporarily. We call that as the cessation of fear by removing the external factors. This is very gross, but this just temporarily is a respite. It's not a real the cessation. Whereas the real cessation, where your problems will come to an end, that has to be sort of only pertain to the Other hand, internal factors, because external factors, or for example, say, okay, I have a hunger problem, then the Tibetan secretary will give me food. Fine, so my hunger is gone. Okay, my fear of hunger is gone. And tomorrow again, I'll be hungry, I'll be thirsty. So this is just a temporary respite. It is not the ultimate solution. But what do you want? You want a temporary solution? You want an ultimate solution? You have to ask this question. And in fact, we samsaric beings generally, they never ask this question. So somebody who can ask this question, that is the person who is trying to look for the escape velocity to exit out of samsara completely. So these are the mature people. These are the wise people. Someone who can ask the question, what do I want? I want a respite from the suffering, or I want the complete freedom from suffering. Anybody who can ask this question seriously inside, that is the mature person. That is really the wise person. Okay. So the wise person will ask whether I want a temporary relief from the suffering or a permanent relief from suffering. Answer is permanent. If permanent, then of the two external factors, removing that, we cannot remove this altogether. Number is too much. And even the factors which are otherwise to be conducive, they also become non-conducive. For example, food is meant to help us, but food can also kill us. The vehicles, they are to make our life comfortable, but they can kill us. The house is to make our life comfortable, to protect us from heat, cold, wild animals, so forth, but the earthquake, the house can kill us. So this is one reality. Now, if we really look for the ultimate solution, ultimate cessation, ultimate freedom from suffering, then the wise people will think of removing the internal factor. So what are the internal factors? So there, the Buddha identified the cause of suffering, contaminant karmas, afflictions, inappropriate attention, and finally self-grasping ignorance. So finally, we have to get rid of the self-grasping ignorance inside. And then meanwhile, self-grasping ignorance is being complemented by the self-centered attitude. And self-centered attitude, of course, to get rid of this completely, we have to achieve Buddhahood. But self-centered attitude, gross level of self-centered attitude, we can eradicate it by the practice of compassion. So when you do that, again, this can greatly relieve us from suffering. Practice of compassion. This is another way of cessation, bringing cessation from the suffering. But that also is a respite. It's not a permanent solution. Now, what about the permanent solution? This question. So there, with the internal self-grasping, okay, let's say we talked about contaminant karmas. Contaminant karmas, we can do to remove the contaminant karmas. We can do to purify the negative karmas. So what happened? Yes, we purify the negative karmas, and say, for example, there is in a house, there's what do you call it? Dampness there, because which you have the asthma problem because the dampness in your house, and this dampness, you don't know where it is coming from, and then you just keep using the dehumidifier, you keep cleaning the house, wiping the walls, but okay, you remove it, and temporarily it is nice, fine, your table is clean, the dampness is gone, you wiped it. Again, after next day, again it's wet, the walls are wet. So what do you do? So some people continue to do it, hard labor all the time. But a wise person will not put the effort there. First will check where is this dampness coming from. If this dampness is discovered to be coming from the pipe, the breakage in the pipe, the leakage from the pipe, the person will fix the pipe. You don't have to do anything else. Everything will become dry on their own. Your problem will be solved. So likewise, that all these, say, the contaminant karmas are there, negative karmas are there, afflictions are there, inappropriate attentions are there, then finally self-grasping ignorance are there, but purifying the contaminant karmas. Self-grasping ignorance, as long as that is not removed, you purify the contaminant karmas all the time, it will just give us respite. Because as long as the leakage is not stopped from the broken pipe, it continues to exude the water. So today you keep things tidy, clean, and dry. Again tomorrow, again the damage will come tomorrow. So therefore, that is again a respite. But that is very important. That's very important. We don't have time to go into this, but that's very important to purify them while we look for the final solution. Then the afflictions. Afflictions, say for example, anger. You subside anger, yes. But the self-grasping ignorance, when that is not removed, you try to subside anger by practicing compassion. Okay, so they say somebody, usually some people, they are so automatic. They are like like short circuit. So when someone is a stupid, what do you do? And then the anger simply erupts like a volcano. You can really control your physical, verbal, and these thoughts. So there is like such a reaction, instant reaction. So there, and then you meet with the teacher, and the teacher advises you, okay, control your anger, first control your physical and verbal, mental is fine. And then gradually you're able to subside this. Now practice compassion, and then suddenly at one point, then the anger really does not find any room to arise within you. Good. But the self-grasping ignorance is not removed. Again, say the next life, you may not meet the same teacher. Again, you may meet with, parents who said that my child is so stupid, my child is so inactive. Look, the neighbor is being so unkind, still he doesn't know how to fight back. He doesn't know how to fight back. And the employer has been so unkind, still she doesn't know how to fight back. And he doesn't know how to fight back. If you meet with such parents, finish what you have practiced the last life with the help of your teachers. Now everything is going to be square one, right? Everything will be turned to square one, or will go back to zero easily. I say undone very effectively. So what's the point? Because self-grasping ignorance is not touched. This is the point. Okay. So now the afflictions. The gross afflictions, again, is like a respite. Now the inappropriate tension, likewise same. So finally, if you really, really, really want to get rid of suffering altogether, we have to seek what the Buddha indicated as the truth of the cessation is to be actualized. What does it mean by that? Truth of the cessation of the self-grasping ignorance. That is to be attained. Only then we can have this suffering becoming zero, and you can be rest assured that the thief, a burglar, has entered your house. You fought with the burglar, you threw the burglar on the outside, and you latched the door from inside. If you didn't latch the door from inside, again he can come back. You latch the door from inside so firmly, then you can rest well. You can sigh with relief. This is what is required. So within that, then there are two presentations. How to bring this cessation, truth of the cessation of the self-grasping ignorance. So there it is. This very important part, and unfortunately we're running out of time. I'm going to just make it very quick. But for those people who are more advanced in your studies, those who are beginners, don't worry too much. For the more advanced, I'm going to share this with you. One, the common presentation, self-grasping. You touch this self-grasping ignorance, get rid of this. Then the real cessation happens. So there, the common interpretation by all the Buddhist schools is that we start to hallucinate. We start to hallucinate. Because of some illness, we start to hallucinate. When you hallucinate, you can see like the tiger is jumping here and there, and so forth. And the one person reported to me about the hallucination. Later on, when the person was healed so well, that person saw himself, the person saw himself in the place, in a cemetery, which is considered to be little, what do you call it, sacred cemetery. So where there was a belief that if you roll yourself on this cemetery where the corpses are laid, if you roll your body on this, then some kind of karmic link or whatever, there was a belief there. So the person said that when I was hallucinating, I was literally seeing myself in that particular cemetery, and then because of this belief, I was rolling. And then actually what happened was that person was on the bed, and the person was rolling on the bed. And the bed is very small. What will happen? Will fall in the daytime. And then luckily, the person's family members are there. Family members, they were holding the person because they knew that the person has the health issue. So the person was, and they could not really stop the person. So the person was continuously rolling. And then when the person was completely healed, the person told me that this is what was happening. Okay, now let's say that some hallucinations are very severe, where not only the hallucination appears, you believe it to be real too. One appearing as hallucinating, appearing as real, number two. Then number, you apprehending the hallucination to be real too. Then sometimes the hallucination is not too severe, that it appears, but you know that you have the sense of conscience, that sense of awareness and the conscience that, okay, this is just a hallucination. You're aware. Their appearance is there, but you don't believe, you don't apprehend it to be real. Two. Now the same, those who seek personal liberation, who seek the truth of cessation of suffering for themselves. For them, they are like, when they succeed in this, they are like the person who's hallucinating, but who's aware that I'm hallucinating. So the person stops believing in the hallucination to be real. So because of this, hallucination cannot affect the person's emotions cannot be affected by the hallucination. That is the state of freedom from being affected by the external factor. When you're not affected, you don't have to fear. So this is the freedom from fear. This is the and that is happening where? On your mind. Your mind is aware that everything is like a dream, everything is like a hallucination. You're aware of that. Although the hallucination still appears, everything still appears as objective real, but then your mind knows that these are not real. So with this, your mind stops to be affected by the external factors. So your mind being freed of the self-grasping ignorance is the truth of cessation, which is commonly accepted by all the Buddhist schools. Now, something unique of the Prasangika, which is so precious, and then we'll stop here. Something unique of the Prasangika is that this explanation, which is rendered by all the other schools, Prasangika says, yes, this is true, this happens. But the real final understanding of the cessation is in the context of the experience of emptiness. That is, not just the mind, your mind be freed of the self-grasping ignorance, but the emptiness of the mind. Emptiness of the mind to be freed of the self-grasping ignorance. That is required. Emptiness of the mind to be freed of the self-grasping ignorance. That is required. How? This is very important. Okay, let's say that okay, I ask, what is this? You will say that this is water. Then I ask the same question to the chemist. They will say this is H2O. Then I ask the same question to the physicist. They will say electrons, protons, neutrons. A bunch of electrons, protons, neutrons. Which is correct. All three are correct. Now, but of the three, while all three are correct, which is the subtlest presentation of the three? The physicist's presentation is the subtlest. Yes, because it goes deeper into more closer towards the the objective reality. That's the substance. Now, say the what we are seeking is where nothing can disturb us. Nothing can disturb us. So what has happened is that, for example, let's say that let's say that your mind, nothing is really there as objective real. So who is saying this? My mind is saying this. Then you try to see the emptiness of the mind also. You see the emptiness of mind. So when you see the emptiness of mind, then not only all other things, they dissolve of the objective existence. You will be, even the self, even this mind, which says that I'm seeing this. Even this mind also dissolves of being objective existence. So when you experience that, the mind, my mind, which I see to be pervaded within the span of the 5 minutes. So what I see as a 5-minute mind, just as I explore this, I see it's just a bunch of electrons, protons, neutrons. I even see this mind as made of the temporal segments. The 5 minutes made of the 5 segments of the mind. The first minute mind, second minute mind, third moment. And then these moments, they don't arise simultaneously. When the second moment is there, the first moment is gone. Others are yet to come. You did not really experience the 5 minutes. It's just 1 minute. The third moment arises, first 2 moments gone. You're not experiencing them. The remainder are yet to experience. What you really experience, if you're at all experiencing something, it's just 1 minute. So where is that 5 minutes mind? It's not really there. You see the emptiness of this 5 minutes mind. 5 minutes lasting mind. You see the emptiness of that. In that experience, just as emptiness, just as this self, this mind dissolves, 5 minute, the lasting mind dissolves. You subject this to all other phenomena. Everything dissolves. Finally, and then you see everything dissolves into this mental projection by your mind. This mind also dissolves. So you experience the emptiness of mind. In this experience of the emptiness of the mind, then there's nothing there to be identified as this or that. Exists? Yes. Exists? Not true. Non-exist? Not true. Exist, non-exist? Not true. Non-existent? Non-existent? Not true. All 4 tetralemma dissolves there. So this is what is described as indescribable. To be yes, no, not yes, not no, not yes, no, not non-yes, not non, no. So this is what is known as, cannot be described in any of these 4 the possibilities. So that is experience. So there, in other words, in that experience, with respect to this experience of the emptiness of the mind, nothing is left there to affect you. So there, how the mind feels is, the mind feels as though like you are in a very extremely profound, the vast expanse of the reality where there's nothing which can really affect you. That is a total freedom. Nothing can affect you. Nothing can affect you. Nothing can make you do things which you don't like. So the fear dissolves. So that experience, where in the experience of emptiness, that nothing can affect you, that the grasping stops. In the experience of emptiness, self-grasping ignorance stops. That is the truth of the cessation, which is precisely explained by Prasangika. Okay, so this is so it's like 12 minutes past. We'll stop here. Okay, so therefore the point is that finally, what do you take away? To take away is like the cessation. Finally, what we seek is the cessation of suffering. And the cessation of suffering, we can think about on various levels. Cessation of the external factors. Therefore, your suffering gets minimized. Removing the external factors, and then your suffering is ceased. This is one, but that is a temporary. And then the cessation of contaminant karmas, purifying the negative karmas. There's also one thing. Then the cessation of the gross afflictions like attachment, anger, jealousy, and so forth. and then the cessation of inappropriate tension. Then finally, the cessation of the self-grasping ignorance. Within the cessation self-grasping ignorance, two. Cessation self-grasping ignorance, the self-grasping ignorance being ceased from the mind. The mind having the cessation of the self-grasping ignorance. One. And the emptiness of the mind having the quality of the cessation of self-grasping ignorance. Two. So we see that the cessation can be experienced, can be understood on all these different levels. And it's very important for us to really try to get experience, study, reflection. And finally, we have to go to the last. For to get to that level, we have to go intellectually, we have to go through a deeper study, reflection, and meditation. And then experientially, we have to go from the removing the external factors to the purifying the negative karmas, to the tackling the negative emotions like the anger, attack, and so forth. And then finally to remove the self-grasping ignorance by the understanding of emptiness, the liberating path. And that too on the emptiness of the mind. Okay. Thank you. This is and I hope that we'll all practice, not only you, me also. Let us all see what we can do to make sure that what the Buddha taught today, Choekhor Duechen, the first turning wheel of Dharma, that it doesn't go waste. With respect to, of course, there are all these great teachers, great enlightened beings who really reap the maximum benefit, but each one of us, and the Buddha taught this not only for them, for all the sentient beings, including each one of us. So let us make it a point that at least we take advantage, take the benefit of this teaching, which the Buddha Shakyamuni taught so compassionately, so lovingly, and the first time in the history of humanity for the last 0.3 million years, the Buddha Shakyamuni for the first time taught this on this day, on the Choekhor Duechen. Okay, so may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas bless each one of you with your, the flourishing of the practice of bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness, with emphasis on understanding how to bring about the cessation of the miseries within yourself and others on the various levels. Okay, thank you so much. We'll end with the dedication prayer. Okay, what we can do is that we can do the long prayer of His Holiness, and then page 261. Okay, those of you who have this book, well and good. If not, as I read this, just listen and then see how much you can reflect the meanings and bring forth activate your aspiration that His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives long and that His wishes be fulfilled spontaneously. Okay. Page 261. Song of Immortality, Prayer for the Long Life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, composed by his two tutors. They have the senior tutor, His Eminence Ling Rinpoche, and his junior tutor, His Eminence Trijang Rinpoche. Om Swasti, to the assembly of most kind teachers, both present and past, the miraculous dance of the body, speech, and mind of the innumerable Buddhas, manifesting in accord with aspirant spiritual capacities, the wish-granting jewel, the source of all virtues and goodness, to you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion. That Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 aeons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the assembly of all meditational deities, manifesting as countless mandalas and divinities, the magical clouds of immaculate transcendent wisdom, reaching to the furthest expanse of the space of ultimate reality. To you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion. That Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 aeons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To all the victorious Buddhas of the 3 times, endowed with 10 powers and who are even masters of the gods, and whose attributes of perfection are the source of all compassionate deeds, benefiting the vast ocean-like realm of sentient beings. To you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion, that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 aeons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the assembly of sacred doctrine embodied in the three vehicles, supremely serene, a jeweled treasure of enlightenment, stainless, unchanging, eternally good, and the glory of all virtues, which actually liberates beings from the suffering of the three worlds. To you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion, that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 aeons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To all members of the enlightening noble spiritual community, who never stray from the thoroughly liberating adamantine city, who possess the wisdom of I that directly sees the profound truth and highest valor to destroy all mechanisms of cyclic existence. To you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion, that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 aeons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the assembly of heroes and dakinis, heavenly beings of the three worlds, who appear in the highest paradises, in the sacred places, and in the cremation grounds, who through creative play in the hundredfold experiences of bliss and emptiness, support practitioners in their meditation on the excellent path. To you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion, that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 aeons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the ocean of protectors endowed with the eyes of transcendent wisdom, to powerful guardians and upholders of the teaching, who wear inseparably on the merit locks the knot symbolizing their pledge to the Vajradhara. To you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion, that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 aeons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. Thus to this congregation of excellent undeceiving refuge, we pray that by the power of this prayer, expressed from the heart, filled with a fervent devotion and humility, may the body, speech, and mind of the soul of the land of snows, the supreme Ngavanlos and Tenzin Gyatso, be indestructible, unfluctuating, and unceasing. May he live immutable for 100 aeons, seated on a diamond throne, transcending decay and destruction. You are the jewel heart embodying all compassionate, beneficial deeds. O most courageous one, you carry on your shoulders the burden of all the Buddhas of the ultimate realms, infinite realms. May all your noble aspirations be fulfilled as is intended. By virtue of this, may the heavenly doors of the fortunate era open eternally, as a source of relief and respite for all beings, and may the auspicious signs reach the apex of existence and release, as the sacred teachings flourish through the times and in all realms. May the nectar stream of the blessings of the lotus holder always enter our hearts and nourish them with strength. May we please you with offerings of dedicated practice, and may we reach beyond the shores of perfect compassionate deeds through the blessings of the wondrous Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, by the infallible truth of the laws of dependent origination, and by the purity of our fervent aspirations. May the aims of my prayers be fulfilled without hindrance. Okay, some mantra recitations. Buddha Shakyamuni mantra. Om Mani Mani Maha Mani Swaha. 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 Om Mani Beme Ho. Om Mani Beme Ho. Om Mani Beme Ho. Om Mani Beme Ho, Om Mani Beme Ho, Om Mani Beme Ho, Om Mani Beme Ho. Om Arabazana de 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 Om Arabazana Om Arabazana de 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 Om Dare Dure Swaha, 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 Om Dare Dure Swaha. Now, medicine Buddha mantra for the healing of the world, for for everyone, for yourself, your family, and for the whole world. Teata Om Begaze, Maha Begaze, Ranza Samunga de Soha, Teata Om Begaze, Mahabegaze, Begaze, Ranza Samunga de Soha, Theata Om Begaze, Begaze, Mahabegaze, Ranza Samunga de Soha, Theata Om Begaze, Begaze, Mahabegaze, Ranza Samunga de Soha, Theata Om Begaze, Begaze, Mahabegaze, Ranza Samunga de Soha, Theata Om Begaze, Begaze, Mahabegaze, Ranza Samunga de Soha, Theata Om Begaze, Begaze, Mahabegaze, Begaze, Ranza Samunga de Soha. Oma Benza Guru Bema Sede Ho, 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 Oma Benza Guru Bema Sede Ho. Mime sewe tenyen cherese, teme kembe ombo chembe yang, dubu ma de chumse sawen, kanche kebe su gen zunga ba, losan chape shala suwa de, mime sewe tenyen cherese, teme kembe ombo chembe yang, dubu ma de chumse sawen da, kanche kebe su gen zunga, losan chape shala suwa de, mime sewe tenyen cherese, teme kembe ombo chembe, dubu ma de chumse sawen da, kanche kebe su gen zunga, okay, we'll do the intention prayer from page 288. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful generous Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samadhi too realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these rules of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the Buddhas who appear in the three times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. Chanjo Semjo Remboche Magya Banam Ge Gyoroche Gyaba Nyam Ba Me Ba Yam Kone Kondo Pe Varasho. May the Supreme Bodhicitta, that there is no arisen, arising grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase forevermore. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all beings without exception into the enlightened state. I dedicate the merit thus gathered towards the realization that is in the prayers of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas for 3 times, and to the upholding of the Dharma teaching and realization. When all lives through the force of this merit, never separated from the 4 wheels of the Mahana vehicle, and accomplish all the stages of the path, renunciation, bodhicitta, perfectly in the 2 stages. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge to the Triple Gem. I confess the negativities individually. I rejoice in the virtues of all the beings. I hold the precious Buddha in my heart. By the power of practicing and supplicating to you, may all be free from sickness, poverty, and conflicts, and may Dharma and auspiciousness proliferate in all the places we abide. The power of union of emptiness and compassion is loosely explained by the protector of both the Dharma and the beings of the land of snows. With the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, we supplicate you that your wishes are fulfilled spontaneously. May the operations of evil thoughts and deeds of the negative forces of humans, non-humans, who help our minister through perverted prayers against the teachings of the Buddhas be totally vanquished through the power of the truth of the 3 jewels. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may enjoy the magnificent Dharma by completing the qualities of the stations and the paths, may quickly attain the state of Vajratara. Throughout my future lifetimes, may I always be guided by Manjushri and be able to uphold the Dharma in general and the teachings of dependent origination in particular, even at the cost of my life. Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhisvatyata Om Gati Gati Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvatyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvatyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvaha. Okay, thank you all of you. May you all have a very happy, virtuous, blessed Choekhor Duechen. Bye-bye.